far away in time. More than 40,000 years ago, the valleys of Central Europe lie in the shadow of vast glaciers. The air is cold, crisp, and filled with silence. Herds of reindeer move across the plains, followed by hunters who watch them closely. But beyond the hunt, beyond the fire, something else begins to take shape in the darkness of the caves. It is here, within deep limestone chambers, that sound itself is carved into history. The caves of the Swabian Jura in present-day southern Germany hold some of the richest archaeological layers of the Upper Paleolithic. Archaeologists, carefully brushing away sediment, uncover traces of early modern humans who lived in these caves during the harsh Ice Age. Charcoal from their hearths still marks the ground. Tiny fragments of ivory, broken beads, and stone tools lie scattered where people once sat in circles. These caves do not just preserve survival, they preserve creativity. At that moment in human history, Homo sapiens are newcomers to Europe. They have travelled from warmer lands, across steppe and forest, gradually expanding into territories once dominated by Neanderthals. Climate is severe, yet pockets of shelter remain. The limestone hills, riddled with caverns, offer both refuge and a canvas for expression. Within these places, humans do more than light fires. They make marks, they shape objects, and, in one extraordinary leap, they discover music. The silence of a cave is unique. Without wind, without bird calls, sound lingers longer. A footstep echoes into the dark. A voice can travel across chambers with ease. It is in this acoustic environment that early humans experiment with tone. The evidence, buried for millennia, comes to us in fragile form. Delicate tubes of bone, pierced with careful holes, smoothed by hands that knew exactly what they were trying to achieve. One of the most remarkable finds is a flute made from the hollow wing bone of a griffon vulture. The bone is naturally long and straight, thin-walled but strong. Along its length, someone has carved a row of holes. The edges of these holes are even, as if shaped by stone blades with steady pressure. The flute fits the mouth, and when breath passes through it, sound emerges, clear, resonant, and controlled. This is not chance damage. It is deliberate craft. Archaeologists date this flute to around 40,000 years ago, making it the oldest known musical instrument in the world. The age is confirmed through radiocarbon analysis of surrounding charcoal and bones. Layers of sediment place it securely in the early Aurignacian culture, the first widespread cultural horizon of modern humans in Europe. Here, side by side with cave art and ivory figurines, lies proof that music already forms part of human life. But one flute alone does not tell the whole story. Other fragments have been found nearby. Pieces of mammoth ivory, split and hollowed, also bear holes arranged in line. Some are broken, others incomplete, but together they show that multiple instruments existed. This suggests that flute making was not an isolated experiment. It was a tradition, passed from person to person, repeated enough times to become part of daily or ritual practice. The presence of flutes in such early layers raises questions. Why make music at a time when survival is so difficult? Food is scarce, winters are long, predators roam the landscape. And yet, instead of devoting every effort to hunting or shelter, groups invest time in sound. One possibility is that music strengthens social bonds. Around a fire, melodies can draw people together, creating shared moments that words alone cannot provide. Another is that music serves ritual purposes linked with the carvings on cave walls, perhaps accompanying ceremonies that we can only imagine. A lesser-known detail comes from the distribution of these finds. The flutes are discovered in caves that also contain some of the earliest figurative art: lions carved from mammoth ivory, horses scratched onto stone. The coincidence of music and image suggests a wider symbolic world emerging rapidly among these groups. Sound and vision, art and craft, intertwine to create meaning. It is possible that caves were not just shelters, but special places where creativity flourished in ways vital to group identity. Yet, mysteries remain. Some scholars debate whether earlier instruments could have existed among Neanderthals. A controversial bone fragment from Divya cave in Slovenia, pierced with holes, has been argued to be a Neanderthal flute more than 50,000 years old. Others counter that the holes are the result of carnivore teeth, not human workmanship. The debate continues, reminding us that the origins of music may be deeper than the evidence now at hand. What we can say with certainty is that by 40,000 years ago, modern humans in Europe were already shaping instruments with clear intent. Step by step, the story expands to planetary scale. At this time, the world is in the grip of the last ice age. Vast ice sheets cover much of northern Europe and North America. Sea levels are lower, coastlines stretch far outward, exposing plains where now lies ocean. Winds are strong, winters harsh, summers brief. Against this backdrop, humans carry sound into caves. The contrast is striking: an icy planet, and within it, pockets of warmth where fragile music is born. The making of flutes requires more than idle curiosity. It demands planning, selecting the right bone, hollowing it carefully, aligning holes precisely. These are tasks requiring patience and skill. They also suggest teaching. Knowledge must pass from one maker to the next. Children perhaps watch adults carve and learn the craft themselves. In this way, music is not just expression, but education, embedding new skills within the group. The acoustic qualities of caves may have shaped the experience further. Imagine a tone played at the entrance, echoing into chambers, returning doubled or softened. Archaeologists today sometimes test acoustics by playing replicas of Ice Age flutes in the original caves. They note that certain chambers amplify sound, creating resonances that feel deliberate, as if the location was chosen for its musical effect. While we cannot know intent, the possibility remains that humans sought places where sound itself seemed alive. From a scientific perspective, the discovery of flutes offers insight into cognitive and cultural complexity. Music involves abstract thought. It requires awareness of pitch, rhythm, and repetition. It also evokes shared emotion, even if we cannot reconstruct it now. The presence of instruments implies that humans 40,000 years ago already thought symbolically, beyond the immediate needs of survival. Alongside beads, carvings, and paintings, flutes form part of a symbolic explosion that marks the dawn of modern human culture in Europe. Still, many questions endure. Did the melodies follow patterns like scales, or were they free and improvised? Did different caves have different musical traditions? Were flutes played in groups, or by individuals leading rituals? The evidence is silent, leaving us only fragments. Yet the silence itself invites reflection. In the long dark of winter, in a cave lit by flickering fire, even a single note would have filled the air with wonder. As glaciers grind across the continent, as rivers carve deeper valleys, As herds migrate with the seasons, humans carry with them a new form of expression. The sound of breath through bone is fragile, yet it has survived in fragments buried beneath sediment. These instruments, older than any written word, older than most art, still speak of a moment when humans first found music in the world. The caves of the Swabian Jura remain quiet now. Tourists walk their chambers. Archaeologists study their layers. But beneath each step lies the memory of sound. Flutes carved from bone, touched by ancient hands, remind us that even in the coldest age, when people sought more than survival, they sought beauty, connection, and meaning through music. And in that search, they left behind echoes that still reach us, across 40 millennia of silence. Step by step, small groups of Homo sapiens make their way across the plains of Eurasia. They have already journeyed far, leaving behind ancestral homelands in Africa tens of thousands of years earlier. Following rivers, moving through valleys, they advance slowly into new regions. Around 45 to 40,000 years ago, they reach the heart of Europe. Here, the land is cold and open, shaped by glaciers and tundra. The newcomers bring not only tools and fire, but also ideas and traditions unlike those seen before. At this time, Neanderthals still live in many parts of the continent. For hundreds of thousands of years, they have adapted to Europe's climate, hunting large animals and making their own stone tools. Their settlements range from Iberian caves to forests of Eastern Europe. Now, however, new people arrive. These Homo sapiens are leaner in build, with more delicate bones and different skull shapes. They carry blades struck from long stone cores, ornaments of shell and ivory, and pigments for marking surfaces. Their appearance marks the beginning of what archaeologists call the Aurignacian culture. The transition is not sudden. For a time, Neanderthals and modern humans live side by side, sometimes in neighboring valleys. Archaeological sites show overlapping use of caves, with different layers containing tools from both groups. The cultural boundaries are not always clear. Some finds even suggest possible exchange of techniques. Yet over the course of a few millennia, Neanderthal populations decline, and Homo sapiens expand steadily across the continent. The newcomers' arrival reshapes Europe, not through a single event, but through gradual replacement and adaptation. Archaeological evidence from this period is rich. At sites such as Geissenklösterle, Hohle Fels, and Vogelherde in the Swabian Jura, researchers uncover tools, ornaments, and figurines dating to the earliest Aurignacian. Slender stone blades are shaped with precision, unlike the heavier flake tools common earlier. Pendants of mammoth ivory are carefully carved, some decorated with incised patterns. Beads made from perforated animal teeth appear in clusters, suggesting personal adornment. These objects reflect not only technical skill, but also symbolic expression. They show that humans invest meaning in things beyond survival. A lesser-known detail comes from the raw materials themselves. Some shells used for beads originate more than 100 kilometers from the caves where they were found. This means that people either traveled long distances or maintained contact with groups living far away. Such movement or exchange implies networks wider than a single valley. The newcomers do not live in isolation. They belong to a broader pattern of connection that stretches across Ice Age landscapes. The arrival of Homo sapiens in Europe raises unresolved questions. How did interaction with Neanderthals unfold in practice? Genetic studies show that interbreeding occurred at some points, since all non-African people today carry small percentages of Neanderthal DNA, but archaeology leaves little trace of everyday encounters. Were they peaceful exchanges, tense rivalries, or a mixture of both? Some sites hint at cultural borrowing, while others show abrupt replacement. The exact dynamics remain uncertain. Scholars continue to debate whether Neanderthal disappearance was caused by climate, competition, or assimilation. Meanwhile, the planet itself moves on vast scales. Around 40,000 years ago, the Earth is in a glacial stage. Massive ice sheets cover northern latitudes, locking away ocean water. Sea levels drop more than 100 meters below present, exposing wide coastal plains. Rivers run swiftly, swollen with meltwater in summer. Winds sweep across steppe tundra, carrying dust that settles in thick layers known as loess. Forests retreat, replaced by open grasslands where mammoths, woolly rhinoceroses, and as reindeer roam. Against this backdrop, human migration is but one thread in a global transformation. The expansion of Homo sapiens into Europe is remarkable for its persistence. Small groups survive harsh winters by clustering in caves, storing fat from hunted animals, and making clothing from hides. Fire is central to their lives, providing heat and light in long nights. Yet these groups also carry with them traditions of art, ornament, and eventually music. The symbolic explosion seen in the Aurignacian is unique, and its roots likely lie in earlier African innovations. Shell beads from sites in North and East Africa, dating back more than 70,000 years, show that symbolic behavior long predates entry into Europe. What changes here is the intensity and diversity of expression. As humans move into Neanderthal territories, the contrast between groups is striking. Neanderthals also use pigments, perhaps for body decoration. They make tools, hunt skillfully, and likely communicate with complex language. But the newcomers introduce new forms of expression on an unprecedented scale: carved animals, abstract signs, and musical instruments. The difference may not be absolute, but it is enough to mark a shift in the archaeological record. For the first time, Europe holds a sustained tradition of symbolic artifacts spreading across wide regions. One unresolved scientific mystery concerns the speed of expansion. Some models suggest that Homo sapiens spread through Europe rapidly, within only a few centuries or millennia. Others argue for slower growth, with local adaptation taking longer. Radiocarbon dates sometimes overlap, leaving room for debate. Did humans move swiftly in pursuit of herds, or did they establish stable communities before pushing farther? The evidence varies from site to site, keeping the question open. Planetary change continues in rhythm. As glaciers grow, ecosystems shift southward. Regions once forested become tundra. Animals adapt their ranges accordingly. Humans, following herds, expand along rivers and valleys that serve as natural corridors. The Danube, for example, provides a pathway into Central Europe, leading eventually toward the Swabian Jura caves. Step by step, groups advance, leaving behind scattered traces that archaeologists recover tens of millennia later. Each fragment, each layer of ash, testifies to the presence of newcomers in a changing world. The settlement of Europe by Homo sapiens is not merely a story of replacement, it is also one of adaptation. Newcomers face shorter days, colder seasons, and different game. They adapt hunting strategies to local herds, design clothing suited for snow, and develop shelters to withstand icy winds. Over generations, knowledge accumulates, refined by experience. Communities pass skills along, ensuring survival in landscapes far harsher than those of their origins. Yet in the midst of these challenges, and symbolic creativity flourishes, and ornaments, figurines, and eventually flutes appear in archaeological layers dating to this first wave of expansion. The timing is no coincidence. As groups navigate difficult environments, shared symbols may provide cohesion. Wearing similar beads, playing similar tunes, and carving similar figures all reinforce group identity. In this way, cultural expression becomes part of survival itself, binding people together against the cold and uncertainty. Step by step, the newcomers transform Europe. Within a few millennia, Neanderthals vanish from the record, while Homo sapiens settle widely. The caves that once sheltered one species now shelter another. Firelight glows on different faces. Tools chip in different patterns, and music echoes where silence once reigned. The arrival of modern humans is not simply a demographic shift. It is a cultural turning point, marking the dawn of new traditions that will echo for tens of thousands of years. The story remains incomplete. Fossils are scarce, artifacts fragmentary. Yet from what we hold, the beads, the blades, the bones, we glimpse the beginnings of a chapter that defines humanity's place in Ice Age Europe. Newcomers arrive not as wanderers only, but as creators, bearers of symbols, carriers of sound. In the cold silence of glacial valleys, their presence reshapes the future. One settlement, one carving, one note at a time. 40,000 years ago, southern Germany is a land on the edge of ice. Vast glaciers cover much of northern Europe, but the Swabian Jura remains free of permanent ice sheets. Here, limestone ridges rise above valleys carved by ancient rivers. Cold winds sweep across the open plains. Snow falls often, blanketing the land in silence. The world is harsh, yet not empty. It is in this frozen landscape that humans find shelter, leaving behind traces that survive for tens of thousands of years. The Swabian Jura lies at a crossroads. To the north stretch glacial plains, barren and unyielding. To the south, the Danube Valley offers a corridor of movement. Herds of reindeer, horses, and mammoths migrate along these routes, and hunters follow them. The land is stark but rich in resources. Large animals provide meat, hides, and bones. Flint and limestone yield sharp blades. Mammoth ivory offers material for carving. Survival depends on careful use of everything the landscape provides. Caves dot the cliffs of this region. They open like wide mouths into the limestone, leading into chambers that remain dry and sheltered. For Ice Age people, these caves are refuge. Inside, temperatures stay more stable than outside. Fire pushes back the darkness, filling the air with smoke and warmth. Families gather near hearths, cooking meat, scraping hides, and shaping tools. Ash accumulates layer by layer, preserving a record of repeated visits. Archaeologists uncover these traces today: stone blades, ivory beads, and fragments of bone flutes. The climate of the Swabian Jura is unforgiving. Winters are long, with temperatures far below freezing. Summers are short, offering only a brief respite. Trees are scarce, limited mainly to hardy pines and birches. Most of the land is open steppe, dotted with grasses and shrubs, yet life persists. Reindeer graze across plains. Woolly rhinoceroses wander in small groups. Mammoths roam slowly, feeding on coarse vegetation. Humans adapt by following these animals, using their migrations as guides for their own survival. A lesser-known detail is the role of plants in this frozen world. Though overshadowed by big game hunting, edible plants and berries are also used. Seeds and residues found in archaeological layers show that people supplement their diet with gathered resources. Roots and tubers provide carbohydrates. Berries give vitamins vital for health. Even in a cold climate, knowledge of plants is essential. This knowledge passes from generation to generation, ensuring survival in lean times. The caves of the Swabian Jura are more than shelters. They become centers of creativity. Figurines carved from ivory depict lions, horses, and mammoths. Beads made from animal teeth and shells suggest personal adornment. And most remarkable of all, flutes carved from bird bones and mammoth ivory produce sound. The frozen landscape frames not just survival, but the earliest flowering of symbolic life in Europe. Here, art and music emerge together, preserved in the cold earth. Yet mysteries remain. Why do so many symbolic objects cluster in this region? Archaeologists debate whether these caves served as ordinary camps or special meeting places. Some propose that groups gathered seasonally, sharing stories, music, and rituals. Others suggest that the acoustic qualities of caves made them chosen spaces for symbolic activity. The evidence is fragmentary, and certainty eludes us. What is clear is that the frozen hills of Swabia sheltered one of the earliest explosions of human creativity. The wider world reinforces this setting. At this time, the Earth is deep in the last ice age. Ice sheets cover much of the north. Sea levels fall globally, exposing vast coastal plains. Winds carry dust across continents, depositing it as loess. Ecosystems shift southward, driving animals and humans into new regions. Against this planetary backdrop, the Swabian Jura stands as a pocket of stability, a place where life persists despite global cold. Inside the caves, daily life unfolds slowly. Hunters return with reindeer carcasses, which are butchered on stone slabs. Bones crack open to release marrow. Hides are scraped clean, prepared for clothing. Sinews are twisted into thread. Around the fire, children watch and learn. Some beads are strung onto cords, worn around the neck or sewn into garments. The glow of firelight flickers across carved ivory figures and polished tools. In these intimate spaces, survival and expression intertwine. One unresolved scientific mystery concerns population size. How many people live in the Swabian Jura at one time? Estimates suggest small groups, perhaps only 20 to 30 individuals in each band. Populations across Europe are sparse, yet the density of symbolic artifacts here is extraordinary. Did this region attract gatherings from wide areas? Did knowledge spread through networks linking different valleys? The limited evidence leaves the question open, a reminder of how much remains unknown. Still, the frozen landscape speaks through what endures. Caves protect fragile objects for millennia. Figurines remain intact, their details sharp. Flutes survive as fragments, their holes still aligned. Charcoal from hearths lies where fires once burned. Each layer of sediment is a page in the long record of human presence. Without the cold and dry conditions of this land, much of this evidence would have vanished. Harsh as it is, the frozen landscape becomes an unlikely guardian of human memory. Step by step, the Swabian Jura reveals its dual nature. Outside, winds howl across open plains. Snow covers the earth, and animals endure long migrations. Inside, warmth and creativity thrive. The caves are places of safety, but also of imagination. Here, people carve, play music, and adorn themselves. They transform raw materials of the frozen world into symbols of identity and meaning. The landscape is not only endured, it is woven into the very beginnings of culture. The frozen land of Swabia is more than background. It is a partner in humanity's early story of art and music. Its caves shelter, its animals provide, its cold preserves. In this place of snow and silence, people craft objects that reach across time. Long after the glaciers retreat, long after fires burn out, the traces remain. The frozen landscape of Swabia still whispers of survival, of creativity, and of the first echoes of music in Europe. In the cold valleys of Ice Age Europe, bones are everywhere. Hunters return from long treks with reindeer, horses, and sometimes mammoths. The remains are used carefully, hides for warmth, meat for food, sinew for thread. Yet among the fragments scattered on cave floors, certain bones stand apart. They are long, hollow, and delicate, wing bones of large birds that soar above the steppe. Unlike heavy mammoth ribs or strong horse femurs, these fragile pieces are light and smooth. They are not only useful, they invite curiosity. Birds themselves play a small but steady role in Ice Age life. Vultures, swans, and cranes circle the skies or gather near rivers. Their feathers may have been plucked for decoration. Their bones, thin-walled and hollow, differ from those of most animals. When split or struck, they resonate with a faint, airy quality. To people who pay close attention to every sound in their environment, this difference is noticeable. A hollow bird bone is more than waste material. It is a potential source of sound. Archaeologists working in caves of the Swabian Jura find these unusual fragments preserved in sediment. Some are complete enough to reveal intentional shaping. One of the most famous comes from the wing of a griffon vulture, a bird with a wingspan over 2 meters. The bone is long and naturally tubular, ideal for modification. Along its surface, evenly spaced holes appear, each carefully pierced through the wall. These are not marks of gnawing animals or random breaks. They align in straight sequence, showing clear human workmanship. The process of turning bone into an instrument requires patience. First, the bone must be selected and cleaned. Then, sharp stone blades scrape the surface smooth. Holes are drilled with pointed tools, twisted steadily until openings appear. The edges are trimmed, preventing cracks from spreading. Finally, the ends may be shaped to allow airflow. This work demands precision, for a misplaced hole can ruin the instrument. The skill shown in surviving examples suggests that makers understood not only craft, but also sound. When air passes across the openings, tones emerge. Archaeologists who create replicas from bird bones discover that the instruments can produce a range of notes, depending on finger placement. The sound is soft but clear, carrying in the still air of caves. In darkness, a single note can echo into chambers, creating an effect larger than its source. The hollow bones, once part of silent birds, become voices of a new human invention, music. A lesser-known detail comes from broken pieces. Some fragments show traces of repair, such as smoothed edges where cracks were carefully reshaped. This hints that flutes were valued, kept in use even when damaged. They were not casual experiments discarded at the first break. They were objects of meaning, carried across seasons, perhaps passed from one hand to another. Their fragility made them precious, and the effort to repair them shows attachment beyond function. The question of intention remains: why choose bird bones over more abundant materials? Mammoth ivory flutes also exist, yet they require laborious splitting and hollowing. Bird bones, by contrast, are naturally tubular. Their lightness makes them easy to carry. Their association with birds, creatures of sky and flight, may have held symbolic weight. Some scholars suggest that humans perceived a connection between bird calls and flute tones, drawing inspiration from the natural world. Others see pure practicality, a material well suited to sound, chosen for that reason alone. The truth may lie in both. Scientific debates also continue over how early these instruments appeared. Radiocarbon dating places several flutes in Swabian Jura caves at around 40,000 years ago. Some researchers propose even earlier origins, perhaps in regions not yet excavated or not yet preserved. Could bird bone instruments have existed before humans reached Europe? Evidence from Africa hints at symbolic traditions far older, though no flutes survive there. The absence of material does not mean absence of sound, leaving the origins of music an open mystery. Step back, and the planetary setting frames this innovation. Ice sheets continue their slow advance. Sea levels remain low, exposing coastlines. Winds carry dust across continents. The world is dry, cold, and shifting. Amid these vast changes, small groups of humans pause to carve fragile instruments from bird bones. On a scale of climate, it seems minor, yet on the scale of culture, it marks a profound moment. Even in frozen valleys, people find time for sound. The act of drilling holes into bone is more than craft. It is recognition of potential. A hollow bird bone can be waste, or it can be transformed into something entirely new. That transformation reflects a shift in how humans perceive the world. They are not merely using resources for survival, they are altering them for symbolic expression. Music, unlike tools or clothing, does not fill the stomach or shield against cold. It fills a different need: connection, rhythm, perhaps ritual. In choosing hollow bones, humans reveal an expanding horizon of meaning. Inside caves, the flutes take on new life. Fire flickers against walls, shadows dance, and notes drift through chambers. The resonance amplifies each sound, turning a small breath into something larger. Archaeologists today test this effect with replicas, finding that certain chambers intensify tone, almost as if designed for performance. Whether intentional or coincidental, the acoustic properties of caves enhance the experience. The hollow bones, once silent, now speak in partnership with stone and air. One unresolved mystery is whether Neanderthals also recognized this potential. A fragment from Divya Babe cave in Slovenia, pierced with holes, has been argued to be a Neanderthal flute. Critics claim the holes are from carnivore teeth. Supporters argue for human workmanship. The debate remains unsettled. If Neanderthals did shape sound from bone, the roots of music extend even deeper. If not, the innovation rests with Homo sapiens in Ice Age Europe. Either way, the hollow bird bone stands as one of the earliest known instruments. The symbolic importance cannot be overstated, and beads, carvings, and paintings decorate the body and the cave. But music moves through air, invisible, yet shared. It can unify groups, soothe children, or mark ritual. The choice of bird bones reflects a deepening relationship with materials of the environment. A wing that once lifted a vulture into the sky now lifts human sound into space. A hollow shaft once filled with blood now carries breath and tone. Transformation is complete. The frozen valleys outside remain harsh, demanding constant effort. Yet within caves, fragile notes drift across darkness. The hollow bones, once silent, become bridges between people, between generations, and between worlds of survival and meaning. In their echoes, we glimpse the beginnings of a human tradition that continues unbroken to this day. Step by step, within the dim glow of Ice Age caves, hands set to work. The task before them is unlike cutting meat, scraping hides, or shaping ordinary stone blades. It is slower, more careful, more fragile. A hollow bird bone lies ready, thin-walled and light. Around it gather stone tools, blades struck from flint cores, sharp enough to pierce, but delicate enough to guide. The maker studies the bone, searching for its natural form, and imagines the sound it might carry once transformed. The carving begins with preparation. First, the bone must be cleaned of remaining tissue. Scraping tools remove sinew and membrane. The surface is smoothed not only for appearance but to prevent cracks. Archaeologists examining Ice Age flutes find regular scrape marks along their length, signs of deliberate preparation. Such details reveal intention, not accident. The maker understands that a fragile material demands careful handling. Every stroke is measured, every cut precise. Next comes the piercing of holes. With pointed stone tools, small indentations are made where openings will be placed. The alignment must be straight, for sound depends on spacing. Holes too close or uneven can distort the tone. Experimental archaeology shows that Aurignacian makers already grasped this. Replicas drilled in the same pattern as ancient flutes produce playable scales. The precision of placement suggests planning, perhaps even rules passed from one maker to another. Knowledge, once learned, is taught and remembered. Archaeologists studying surviving flutes notice another detail. The holes often have smoothed edges, as if finished after drilling. This prevents sharp cracks from spreading and strengthens the instrument. It also shapes the flow of air, producing clearer notes. Such care reveals more than skill. It shows patience, a willingness to invest time in something not essential to survival. In a world where food and warmth dominate, the decision to carve sound marks a turning point. It reflects a vision that extends beyond immediate need. The moment of testing must have been delicate. After drilling, the maker raises the bone to the lips. A first breath passes through. Perhaps at first the sound is weak, a hollow whisper. Then, with adjustment, tone emerges clear to resonant, unexpected. Fingers shift across holes, changing pitch. The cave itself answers with echoes, turning a small note into a presence that fills space. Archaeologists who play replicas describe haunting sounds, soft yet distinct, capable of carrying across chambers. For Ice Age people, this must have been astonishing, a human breath transformed into music. A lesser-known detail concerns ivory flutes. Unlike bird bones, mammoth tusks are solid. To make a flute from ivory, the tusk must be split lengthwise, hollowed, and rejoined. This process is far more complex than working with natural tubes. Yet examples from Swabian Jura show that it was done successfully. Makers carved channels, then sealed halves together with pitch or sinew. Such work requires advanced planning and technical mastery. The existence of ivory flutes alongside bone ones suggests a culture deeply invested in exploring sound, willing to experiment with difficult materials. Why invest such effort? Scholars suggest several possibilities. Music could serve ritual, marking moments of gathering, birth, or death. It could aid teaching, helping rhythm guide speech or memory. It could accompany dance, reinforcing unity in groups. Or it could simply be enjoyed, a form of expression beyond practical use. Archaeological evidence cannot answer with certainty. What we know is that time and energy were devoted to carving sound, showing that meaning lay within. One unresolved scientific mystery concerns whether standardized systems of pitch existed. Were Ice Age flutes tuned to specific scales, or were they free-form? Replicas produce intervals similar to modern pentatonic scales, yet this may be coincidence. Some flutes are broken, others incomplete, leaving the full range unknown. Without written records, the structure of melodies remains hidden. The mystery endures, reminding us that while we can recreate sound, we cannot reconstruct intention fully. The planetary stage frames this innovation. Around 40,000 years ago, glaciers dominate the north. Sea levels fall, exposing vast coastal plains. Winds sweep across steppe tundra, scattering dust. The world is colder, harsher, and yet humans pause to drill tiny holes in fragile bones. On a global scale, the act seems small, yet in cultural terms, it signals expansion of imagination. People no longer shape tools only for survival. They carve instruments for sound, for meaning, for connection. Inside caves, the carving of sound intertwines with other creative acts. In the same layers where flutes are found, archaeologists uncover ivory figurines, lions, horses, mammoths, shaped with delicate detail, beads of shell and bone, marked with holes for stringing, lie scattered, pigments of ochre stain, fragments of stone. Together, these finds reveal a symbolic world taking shape. The flute is not an isolated invention. It belongs to a broader transformation in which humans craft objects to carry ideas, not just functions. The precision required to make flutes suggests knowledge passed across generations. Children likely watched elders carve, learning the sequence of steps. They may have practiced on fragments, imitating sounds until skill grew. This transfer of knowledge ensured continuity, embedding music into community life. Each flute, then, carries not only sound but memory of teaching. It binds generations through shared craft. Another small detail emerges from wear patterns. Some flutes show smoothing near holes, as if fingers repeatedly pressed against them. This indicates use over time, not just brief experimentation. These were instruments played often, perhaps in repeated gatherings. They were not curiosities left aside, but active tools of expression. The marks of touch are faint echoes of music once present, still visible thousands of years later. The carving of sound marks a threshold. From stone blades to ivory beads, human hands transform material into meaning. Yet music is different. It is intangible, vanishing the moment it is made. Only through instruments can traces endure. The flutes of the Aurignacian are thus rare bridges between sound long lost and object still present. They remind us that even in harsh conditions, people invested in experiences beyond survival, carving fragile bones to release invisible voices. Step by step, the process unfolds, selecting bone, smoothing surface, piercing holes, shaping edges, testing sound. Each stage reflects intention. Each breath through the finished flute confirms success. Across valleys filled with snow and silence, music rises carried by wind and echo. The carving of sound is both craft and creation, a human gesture that transforms bone into melody, survival into culture, breath into history. The frozen landscape outside remains unforgiving, yet inside caves, fragile tones drift through air. These early instruments, carved with patience and skill, represent more than objects. They embody a vision of humanity reaching beyond necessity. In their presence, we see that even 40,000 years ago, people sought beauty, rhythm, and shared experience. The carving of sound marks the birth of music, a thread that has never been broken. Far inside a limestone cave, the moment arrives. After hours of shaping and smoothing, a hollow bird bone is ready. Its holes are aligned in sequence, their edges carefully trimmed. The maker raises it to the lips, inhales, and exhales gently. At first, the sound is faint, a whisper of air against stone. Then, with a shift in angle, tone emerges, clear, steady, unexpected. A human breath has become music. This act, simple in motion yet vast in meaning, changes how people interact with their world. Until now, sound comes from voices, from clapping, from striking objects together. But with a flute, sound is extended, breath flows into material, transformed into tone that lingers beyond the body. Archaeologists who test replicas describe haunting notes that echo in cave chambers. The acoustic space amplifies each vibration, making a single tone feel larger than its source. For Ice Age people, the first successful breath must have carried awe. Archaeological finds confirm that these instruments were functional. Flutes from the Swabian Jura have hole placements precise enough to create scales. Experimental musicians play replicas and produce sequences resembling pentatonic tones, a pattern still common in music worldwide. The implication is striking. Not only did early humans make instruments, they may have understood pitch relationships that give music structure. Whether intentional or instinctive, the placement of holes reflects knowledge that goes beyond chance. A lesser-known detail concerns evidence of repeated playing. Some flutes bear polish near holes, formed by the pressure of fingers. Over time, oils and movements smooth the surface. This wear pattern shows that flutes were not made once and discarded. They were used regularly, perhaps passed from one player to another. Each time a note was played, breath added to the history of the object. These traces of touch survive long after the sound itself has vanished. The first breath through a flute is also the first step into new forms of social experience. Music has the power to gather groups. Around firelight, tones can weave into rhythm, encouraging movement or dance. In darkness, music can focus attention, marking ritual moments. It may even soothe children, carrying melodies that calm restless nights. Though we cannot know exact usage, the potential is clear. Music binds people together. A single breath through hollow bone creates not only sound, but community. Yet questions remain. Did people compose fixed melodies, or were sounds improvised freely? Were flutes played solo or in groups? Archaeology offers no answers. All that survives are the instruments themselves, not the songs. Scholars can only guess, guided by patterns in replicas. Some suggest that scales imply structured music, while others argue for spontaneous sound-making. The mystery endures, a silence surrounding the first music that we cannot fill. On a planetary scale, The setting magnifies the significance of this act. Around 40,000 years ago, glaciers dominate the northern hemisphere. Winters are severe, summers brief. Herds of reindeer and mammoths wander across open plains, while humans endure in small numbers. Against this backdrop, carving and playing flutes may seem minor. Yet in cultural terms, it marks expansion of imagination. While ice sheets reshape landscapes, people reshape sound, bending air into melody. The scale of change is both planetary and personal. The caves themselves heighten the experience. Limestone walls reflect sound in complex ways. A note played at the entrance echoes into depths, returning altered. In large chambers, tones sustain, overlapping in resonance. Archaeologists have tested acoustics in these spaces, finding that certain areas amplify frequencies more strongly. It is possible that early humans noticed this and chose locations for performance. Whether deliberate or not, caves transform each breath into something larger, joining human sound with stone. The fragility of flutes emphasizes their meaning. Bird bones are thin, easily broken. To keep them intact requires care in transport and use. Some fragments show evidence of repair, suggesting that broken instruments were not discarded but mended. This care implies value beyond novelty. Music mattered enough to preserve, even in a world of constant struggle for survival. The choice to repair flutes reflects emotional and cultural weight, not just practical interest. A subtle but important detail is the relationship between human breath and natural calls. Birds themselves produce melodic sounds. A griffon vulture, whose wing bone formed one of the earliest flutes, is mostly silent in life, yet its hollow bone, reshaped, sings through human lungs. Perhaps people drew inspiration from birds that did call, swans, cranes, or geese. Hearing those tones in the wild, they may have sought to imitate them. The flute becomes both imitation and extension of the natural world, linking human and animal voices. One unresolved scientific question concerns who played the flutes. Were they specialists, skilled individuals within groups, or did many people learn? The care required to make instruments suggests expertise, but playing might have been widespread. Children could have experimented while adults refined techniques. Without records, we cannot know. The silence of archaeology leaves us only the object, not the players. Yet the very existence of flutes indicates that someone invested in learning and passing on the skill. The first breath through a flute carries symbolic weight. It transforms an object of bone into a medium of culture. Unlike tools or clothing, which leave visible outcomes, music leaves none. It exists only while played. Yet its effect on listeners may have been profound. Notes echoing in caves could mark identity, belonging, or spiritual meaning. Even if melodies are lost, the fact that sound was carved and played shows that humanity reached for something intangible. Step by step, the sequence unfolds: bone carved, holes drilled, breath drawn, sound released. The moment of first music is both fragile and enduring. Fragile, because the instrument could break at any time. Enduring, because once discovered, music could not be forgotten. The tradition of sound through hollow bones spread, repeated, and cherished. In each note, people experienced not just survival, but beauty. Not just breath, but expression. Beyond Europe, the idea may have traveled further. Though no equally old flutes survive outside this region, Music likely emerged wherever humans settled. Voices alone may have carried it in other lands. Instruments, fragile and rare, remain by chance. The Swabian Jura flutes endure only because caves preserved them. Elsewhere, evidence may have vanished. The first breath through hollow bone thus represents not just one region, but a global human step, an embrace of sound as part of life. The glaciers outside grind slowly forward. Winds sweep dust across plains. Rivers cut deeper channels. Yet inside caves, people gather around fire, and sound flows from bone. The first breath through the hollow is not only an act of play, it is an act of identity, declaring that humans are more than hunters and survivors. They are makers of music, shapers of sound, seekers of meaning in the air itself. From that first note, the tradition continues unbroken into the present. Deep in the Swabian Jura, limestone caves stretch into darkness. Their walls bear the marks of time, stalactites hanging like frozen drips, chambers carved by ancient rivers. In these spaces, early humans not only lived, but created. Archaeologists uncover layers of ash, bones, and tools. Yet among these remains are objects that stand apart: ivory figurines, ochre-stained stones, and delicate flutes. These caves preserve the earliest combined record of art and music in Europe, perhaps in the world. The most famous sites, Hohlefels, Geissenklösterle, and Vogelherde, have yielded remarkable finds. At Hohlefels, archaeologists discovered the Venus of Hohlefels, a small figurine carved from mammoth ivory. Its exaggerated features suggest symbolic or ritual meaning. Nearby, fragments of flutes made from vulture bone and mammoth ivory appear in the same cultural layer. This coincidence is striking. In one cave, both visual and auditory symbols emerge side by side. It suggests that art and music were not separate pursuits, but part of a broader symbolic world. The carvings themselves reveal extraordinary detail. Figurines of lions, mammoths, and horses are shaped with careful strokes. Some are small enough to fit in a hand, others pierced with holes for suspension. Their presence implies imagination extending beyond daily survival. People who faced long winters still invested hours in shaping animals they might never see directly. The flutes, equally fragile, require similar patience. Taken together, they represent parallel expressions of creativity, images in ivory, sounds in air. A lesser-known detail concerns engraved signs. On fragments of bone and ivory, archaeologists find series of lines and dots scratched deliberately into surfaces. These marks may be simple tallies, decorative patterns, or something more symbolic. Their meaning is unknown, yet they accompany carvings and flutes in the same layers. The caves thus preserve not only figurative art and music, but also abstract marks, an early hint at symbolic notation. Even if we cannot decipher them, their presence expands the cultural picture. The cave's acoustics may have influenced both carving and music. In Hohlefels, chambers echo strongly, amplifying tones from flutes. Shadows from firelight flicker across walls, animating figurines held in hand. It is easy to imagine gatherings where sound and image merged, creating multisensory experiences. Though speculative, experiments with replicas show that cave acoustics shape sound in powerful ways. The placement of artifacts deep inside chambers suggests that these spaces were chosen intentionally, not randomly. The caves were theatres of sound and vision. One unresolved scientific mystery is whether visual art and music were created by the same individuals. Were certain people artisans of ivory and others musicians of bone? Or did one person carve both figurines and flutes? The archaeological record cannot tell. Tools for carving ivory and drilling holes in bone are similar, but skill levels vary. Some objects show masterful precision, others rougher attempts. This diversity hints at community participation, where different members contributed according to ability. Still, whether art and music were unified in a single role remains unknown. On a planetary scale, these creations stand against a backdrop of glacial cold. Ice sheets cover much of northern Europe. Winters last long months, with short summers bringing only brief relief. Yet inside caves, humans produce objects that serve no direct role in survival. Figurines cannot be eaten. Flutes cannot provide warmth. They represent something else, symbolic life flourishing even under pressure of climate. The contrast is striking. Glaciers grind across continents, while small groups carve ivory into animals and blow music through hollow bone. Against planetary vastness, human creativity asserts itself. Archaeologists also note the distribution of finds. While flutes and figurines cluster in the Swabian Jura, other European regions yield fewer early symbolic artifacts. This concentration suggests that these caves may have been special centers. Perhaps they served as hubs where groups gathered seasonally, exchanging ideas and objects. If so, the caves were not just shelters, but cultural crossroads. Their significance may have stretched far beyond the valleys where they stand. Another small but telling observation comes from the wear on figurines. Some show polish along edges, as if handled often. They were not left untouched in hidden places, but carried or displayed. Similarly, flutes show signs of repeated use, with smoothed areas near finger holes. These objects were not static. They lived within daily or ritual life, used repeatedly across seasons. Their presence in caves reflects both symbolic and practical roles in the rhythm of community. The caves of art and music also raise questions about memory. Each figurine or flute represents time invested, skill applied, and meaning attached. But their endurance across generations depends on teaching. Children likely watched adults carve ivory and drill bone. They may have learned by imitation, practicing on scraps before attempting finished pieces. The survival of such traditions requires continuity. The caves preserve the outcomes, but behind them lie invisible chains of instruction linking one generation to the next. Step by step, the picture unfolds. People gather in caves, light fires, carve ivory, drill bones, play flutes, and string beads. Shadows dance, tones echo, and objects carry meaning. These acts do not feed bodies directly, but they feed identities. They create shared symbols, binding groups together through vision and sound. The caves thus function as more than shelters. They are stages where humanity performs its first known symphonies of art. One more unresolved question concerns the role of ritual. Were figurines and flutes used in ceremonies or in everyday life? Some scholars argue that deep placement of artifacts suggests ritual use, hidden from daily camps. Others propose that art and music permeated all aspects of life, not confined to sacred moments. The truth may lie in between. Objects may have shifted roles depending on occasion, blending leisure, ritual, and teaching. Without direct evidence, we can only acknowledge the range of possibilities. Still, what endures is remarkable. The caves hold evidence of the first convergence of visual and auditory creativity. Long before written words or painted temples, humans here carved animals from ivory and played notes through bone. These acts, fragile and fleeting, are preserved by accident of geology and climate. They offer us a glimpse into minds that saw the world not only as a place to endure, but as a canvas to shape with image and sound. The glaciers outside grind slowly across plains. Winds scatter dust, rivers carve valleys deeper. Yet within caves, firelight flickers on carved figures, and music drifts through chambers. The caves of art and music preserve one of humanity's earliest cultural revolutions, where survival meets imagination, and breath becomes melody alongside image. In these frozen valleys, the first symphony of human expression begins. Within the limestone caves of the Swabian Jura, archaeologists uncover an unusual overlap. In the same layers of sediment, flutes carved from bird bone lie near ivory figurines of animals and humans. Ash from hearths mingles with beads and ochre fragments. These discoveries suggest that caves were not simply shelters for survival. They were shared spaces where sound, image, and ritual intertwined. The evidence invites a question. What did these spaces mean for the people who gathered in them? The caves are vast, often stretching deep into hillsides. Some chambers are small, suitable for sleeping or storing supplies. Others expand into halls where echoes magnify even the softest sound. It is in these larger spaces that archaeologists find concentrations of symbolic artifacts, flutes, figurines, and engraved bones cluster together as if intentionally placed. This pattern hints that caves functioned as more than refuges from cold. They may have served as gathering places where groups came together for special events. A lesser-known detail comes from the positioning of certain finds. At Vogelherd Cave, ivory figurines were discovered near entrances, where daylight filters in. At Holer Fells, a flute fragment was uncovered deeper inside, beyond natural light. Such contrasts suggest different uses of cave zones. Some objects may have been displayed near light, others hidden in darkness. Archaeologists debate whether these placements reflect ritual choices, practical convenience, or simple chance. The mystery remains unresolved, but the variation itself is telling. It shows that caves were used in complex, deliberate ways. The shared use of caves for both art and music raises further questions. Were carvings and flutes part of the same activities, or separate practices coincidentally stored in the same spaces? Scholars propose that they were connected. Carved figures of animals may have been shown while music played, creating performances that engaged both sight and sound. Firelight, flickering on ivory surfaces, could animate carvings. Flute tones, resonating in chambers, would amplify the effect. Together, these experiences may have created rituals of power and memory. Yet the purpose of these rituals is unknown. Some suggest they related to hunting, invoking animal spirits for success. Figurines of lions and mammoths could symbolize strength or guidance. Music might have accompanied dances mimicking animal movement. Others propose social functions, where groups reinforced bonds through shared ceremonies. In both cases, the caves provided atmosphere, enclosed, echoing, lit by fire, and filled with symbolic objects. The evidence does not speak clearly, but it points toward intentional gathering beyond daily tasks. On a planetary scale, this setting deepens the mystery. 40,000 years ago, Europe is cold and dry, dominated by glaciers. Populations are sparse, scattered across valleys. Yet in this difficult environment, humans devote time to symbolic gatherings in caves. Against the vast backdrop of Ice Age climate, small groups create cultural spaces where survival merges with expression. The planetary harshness makes these efforts more striking. They show that even amid cold winds and scarce food, humans sought meaning together. Archaeological traces of sound reinforce this idea. Replicas of Aurignacian flutes produce tones that travel clearly in caves. Experiments show that certain chambers amplify specific frequencies, creating natural resonances. If people noticed this, they may have chosen particular spaces for music. The cave itself becomes part of performance, shaping sound in ways that enhance ritual. In this sense, caves are not passive shelters but active participants, joining stone, fire, image, and tone into shared experiences. A subtle observation comes from the wear on figurines and flutes. Both show polish consistent with handling. These were not hidden artifacts never touched. They were used repeatedly, carried, and displayed. The overlap of worn figurines and played flutes suggests that they circulated together in social life. Their shared context within caves supports the idea of combined use. Art and music did not exist in isolation, but as parts of larger practices. One unresolved scientific debate is whether such practices imply belief systems, early religion, ritual, or symbolic cosmologies. Some scholars argue that the evidence points towards structured ritual life, with caves serving as sanctuaries. Others caution against overinterpretation, noting that the same objects might have been used informally. The absence of written records leaves the question open. What is certain is that people invested time and effort into creating and using symbolic artifacts in shared cave spaces. The why remains hidden. Still, patterns recur. Across multiple caves, the combination of flutes, figurines, beads, and ochre appears. This repetition suggests tradition, not accident. Traditions require teaching, memory, and continuity. They imply that groups agreed upon shared practices, returning to caves with expectation and purpose. Whether seasonal gatherings, rituals of initiation, or ceremonies of survival, the caves functioned as nodes of cultural memory. Each visit layered new objects into sediment, building archives of symbolic life. Step by step, the picture grows clearer. Imagine groups entering caves, carrying torches that cast shifting light. Firelight flickers on ivory figures. Flute tones rise into chambers, bouncing back as echoes. Shadows lengthen, sound deepens, and the experience surrounds participants. Children watch elders play and carve, absorbing knowledge. Objects are handled, displayed, and perhaps offered in ritual. Over generations, caves accumulate layers of ash, tools, beads, and music fragments. The spaces themselves become memory keepers, holding traces of lives long gone. The shared use of caves also emphasizes community. In harsh climates, survival requires cooperation. Music and art reinforce that cooperation by creating bonds. Playing together, carving together, watching together. These acts generate identity. They remind groups of who they are, even as they move across valleys and follow herds. The caves anchor their lives in place, providing continuity amid constant movement. Shared spaces thus become both cultural and practical, binding groups in rhythm and ritual. Another small detail underscores the point. Some figurines show wear, suggesting they were suspended, perhaps worn as pendants. If so, individuals carried symbols from caves into daily life. Music, likewise, could be played outside caves, though acoustics differed. This portability connects caves to wider landscapes. Shared spaces were not isolated, but part of networks extending across valleys. The presence of symbolic artifacts elsewhere shows that meaning traveled with people, linking daily survival with ritual memory. Planetary rhythms continue. Glaciers advance, rivers shift, herds migrate. Humans follow, adapting with each change. Yet amid these vast forces, caves remain stable anchors. Their limestone walls shelter continuity, preserving objects long after their makers are gone. Today, archaeologists piece together fragments to reconstruct stories of shared spaces. Each find is a clue, pointing toward gatherings where image, sound, and community converged. In the end, the mystery of shared spaces remains. We know that art and music coexisted in caves. We know that objects were handled, played, and valued. We know that acoustics and firelight shaped experiences. But the exact meanings, the rituals and the songs, the beliefs are lost. What endures is the pattern of human effort, repeated across generations. Shared spaces hold echoes of voices, tones, and carvings, reminding us that even in the Ice Age, humans sought connection through culture. When archaeologists sift through the ash and fragments of Ice Age caves, they do not find only the signs of survival. Alongside butchered bones and flint blades appear beads, figurines, and delicate flutes. These objects suggest something deeper, life beyond hunting and firelight. In the Swabian Jura and across early Europe, humans created more than tools. They created symbols, sounds, and shared experiences that gave meaning to their world. Daily survival in the Ice Age was demanding. Winters stretched for months, with snow covering valleys and rivers locked in ice. Hunters followed reindeer, horses, or cut mammoths, bringing back meat and hides. Fires warmed caves, and hides sewn with sinew kept cold at bay. Yet within these routines, time was set aside for other activities. Beads were drilled, figurines carved, flutes played. These acts, unnecessary for bodily survival, served another purpose: the survival of identity, memory, and connection. One of the strongest clues comes from the flutes. To make one required patience, precision, and skill. Once finished, it produced tones that echoed through caves. Archaeologists who play replicas describe how sound transforms space, making chambers feel alive. The experience must have gathered people together, focusing attention on shared sound. Beyond hunting and firelight, music offered a way to strengthen bonds, reduce tension, and create cohesion in small groups facing constant challenges. A lesser-known detail comes from ivory beads found in these same layers. Some are tiny, drilled with holes so fine they must have required hours of careful work. When strung together, they formed necklaces or sewn ornaments. These beads served as visible markers of identity, showing who belonged to which group, or marking stages of life. Their effort shows that people valued expression as much as sustenance. Ornament and music together hint at communities bound by shared style, as well as shared struggle. Still, mysteries remain. Why invest so much in symbolic expression when survival was uncertain? Some scholars suggest that art and music functioned as social glue. Small groups, numbering perhaps only a few dozen, needed strong bonds to endure. Shared rituals of sound and decoration reinforced belonging. Others argue for ritual meaning, where music and carvings connected humans with the animal world or the spiritual unseen. Without written records, the truth is hidden. What we see is the material residue of symbolic life, pointing beyond necessity. The planetary stage makes these acts more striking. 40,000 years ago, Earth was colder and drier than today. Glaciers expanded, lowering sea levels by more than 100 meters. Winds carried dust across continents, depositing thick layers of loess. Forests retreated, replaced by open steppe. Herds migrated across vast distances, and humans followed. In such unstable conditions, the creation of music and ornament seems extraordinary. While glaciers carved valleys and rivers shifted course, humans carved ivory and bone for beauty and sound. Evidence of repeated visits to caves strengthens this picture. Hearths appear in layers stacked one upon another, showing that people returned over centuries. Each time, new objects were left behind. Another flute, another bead, another figurine. This continuity implies tradition. Communities not only survived but carried forward symbolic practices. Beyond hunting and firelight, they cultivated memory, ensuring that knowledge and creativity endured across generations. Archaeologists also observe wear on figurines and flutes, signs of frequent use. They were not stored away untouched. They were handled, played, and displayed. This suggests that symbolic life was integrated into daily routines, not restricted to rare ceremonies. A flute could be played by firelight on long nights. Beads could be worn during hunts or gatherings. Figurines could be shown to children, teaching stories or lessons. Symbolism was woven into every layer of life. One unresolved scientific debate concerns the role of music in language development. Some researchers argue that rhythm and melody supported communication, helping groups coordinate or remember information. Others caution that evidence is too limited to connect directly. Still, the coexistence of flutes and advanced speech in early Homo sapiens invites speculation. Did melodies accompany storytelling? Did rhythm reinforce memory of myths or migrations? The answers remain unknown, yet the possibility enriches the picture of life beyond survival. Step by step, the broader pattern emerges. Across the old world, symbolic artifacts appear alongside tools of survival. In Africa, beads made from shells date back over 70,000 years. In Europe, figurines and flutes appear with the Aurignacian. In Asia, painted stones and ornaments surface later. This pattern suggests that once symbolic expression takes root, it spreads quickly. It becomes essential, not optional, part of human life. Beyond hunting and firelight, people everywhere sought meaning through sound and image. In caves, the contrast is vivid. Outside, winds howl, snow drifts, and predators stalk. Inside, fire crackles, beads glimmer, and flutes sing. The difference is not only physical, but cultural. Fire provides warmth, but music provides connection. Tools cut meat, but carvings cut into memory. Survival demands fuel, yet identity demands symbols. Together, they form the dual foundation of human life, body and spirit, necessity and imagination. Another detail underscores this union. At Geisenklösterle Cave, ivory figurines of animals were found alongside flutes. Both were crafted from the same raw material, mammoth tusk. One half of tusk becomes a figure, another half a hollowed flute. This shared source ties art and music together materially as well as culturally. The mammoth, hunted for food, also provides the medium of symbolic life. Survival and imagination thus flow from the same animal, linking necessity with meaning. Planetary rhythms continue, glaciers grind across landscapes, sea levels fall, and climates shift. Yet in caves, humans invest in fragile things, beads that could break, flutes that could crack, figurines that could be lost. That they survive at all is due to accident of preservation, but their very fragility underscores their value. People protected them, carried them, repaired them. Beyond hunting and firelight, fragility itself became part of meaning, a reminder that human expression is as delicate as life. One unresolved question lingers: how widespread was this symbolic life? Were flutes and figurines common across all groups, or unique to certain valleys? Archaeological gaps make it difficult to know. What is clear is that in the Swabian Jura, symbolic culture flourished early and strongly. Whether other groups matched it remains uncertain. Still, the evidence here proves that by 40,000 years ago, humans had already stepped far beyond survival, shaping lives with sound, image, and ritual. In the end, the story is not only of tools and fire, but of music and art. Beyond hunting and firelight, humans sought beauty, identity, and meaning. They carved beads from ivory, shaped figures of lions, drilled holes in bones, and breathed melodies into darkness. These acts, fragile yet enduring, carried communities through harsh winters and uncertain migrations. They reveal that survival was never enough. From the beginning, people reached beyond necessity, shaping culture that still echoes today. Around 40,000 years ago, the caves of the Swabian Jura become windows into a new human reality. Archaeologists uncover objects not limited to function, but infused with meaning: flutes made from hollow bones, beads strung together, and figurines carved from ivory. These artifacts reveal that early modern humans in Europe were innovators not only in survival strategies, but also in symbolic life. The reach of their innovation extends far beyond hunting weapons or fire-making. It enters the realms of music, ornament, and imagination. The Aurignacian culture, associated with these people, marks the first widespread horizon of symbolic expression in Europe. Archaeological layers show long stone blades struck from prepared cores, efficient and standardized. Yet alongside these practical tools lie ornaments of shell and ivory, painted stones, and carefully carved animals. This combination shows that innovation did not follow a single path. It branched into multiple domains: practical technology, personal decoration, and artistic creation. Each domain reinforced the others, shaping a cultural whole. A lesser-known detail concerns pigments. In some caves, traces of ochre and charcoal appear on stones and tools. These pigments may have been used for body painting or for marking surfaces. Though not as dramatic as later cave paintings in France or Spain, these fragments suggest that color, too, was part of Aurignacian expression. Red ochre, ground from minerals, could be applied to skin or to objects. The addition of color to beads or carvings transforms them from plain artifacts into symbolic ones. Even simple pigments represent another layer of innovation. The reach of Ice Age creativity is also measured in materials. Archaeologists find shells far from coasts, carried over long distances to interior caves. Some beads are made from perforated animal teeth, worn smooth from use. Others are ivory discs, carved with holes for threading. These objects show that innovation spread across landscapes. People did not rely only on local resources. They exchanged or transported items, building networks of connection. Innovation here is not isolated invention, but shared practice, linking valleys into broader traditions. Still, mysteries remain. Did all groups innovate at the same pace, or were certain regions more active? The Swabian Jura holds dense evidence, but other areas show less. Scholars debate whether this reflects cultural differences or preservation bias. Perhaps symbolic life flourished more widely, but only in certain caves did conditions preserve fragile artifacts. The uneven record leaves open the question of how far symbolic innovation reached across Ice Age Europe. What is clear is that in some regions it flourished remarkably early. On a planetary scale, the timing is striking. While humans in Europe craft ornaments and music, the Earth undergoes glacial expansion. Vast ice sheets cover northern latitudes, lowering sea levels and exposing new land. Dust storms sweep across steppes, carrying fine particles that settle in low deposits. Ecosystems shift southward, forcing humans and animals to adapt. Against these massive forces, cultural innovation seems fragile. Yet it persists, showing that imagination thrives even under climatic pressure. The reach of human innovation defies planetary cold. The variety of objects found together strengthens this impression. At Hohlefels, figurines of animals appear with flutes. At Vogelherde, beads cluster near hearths. At Geissenklösterle, ivory fragments reveal both tools and ornaments. Each site holds a mixture of survival and symbolism, suggesting that innovation was not compartmentalized. Instead, it permeated daily life. A hunter might return with reindeer meat and ivory suitable for carving. A bead maker might shape ornaments while fire crackled. A flute player might test new tones while others prepared hides. Survival and creativity moved side by side. One unresolved scientific question concerns the spread of these traditions. Did ideas about beads, flutes, and figurines travel with migrating groups? Or did different communities invent them independently? Genetic studies suggest that populations across Europe were small, with frequent movement. Cultural diffusion may have been rapid, yet independent invention is also possible. The universality of symbolic expression in human groups hints that once conditions allowed, creativity emerged naturally. Whether shared through networks or born anew, the reach of innovation spread widely. Another subtle observation is the persistence of certain themes. Animal figurines dominate Aurignacian carvings. Lions, mammoths, and horses appear repeatedly. These creatures may have held symbolic power, representing strength, fertility, or guidance. The repetition across sites suggests shared traditions or mythologies. Flutes, too, appear in multiple caves, not as single curiosities, but as recurring inventions. These patterns show that innovation was not random. It followed themes that resonated across groups, shaping cultural continuity. The reach of Ice Age innovation also extends to social organization. Making beads, carving ivory, and shaping flutes require time and skill. Not everyone in a group may have been equally skilled. Some individuals likely specialized, passing expertise across generations. This specialization reflects social structures where knowledge was valued and preserved. Innovation was not only individual but collective, rooted in teaching and learning. The presence of complex symbolic artifacts points to communities investing in roles beyond simple subsistence. Step by step, the significance grows. By 40,000 years ago, the humans in Europe are not merely surviving Ice Age conditions. They are innovating across multiple spheres: technology, ornament, music, and art. Each innovation builds on another, creating a cultural fabric that extends beyond immediate need. The reach of this innovation is visible in every flute fragment, every bead, every figurine. Together, they show that human creativity expands wherever people settle, regardless of climate or challenge. Yet fragility remains. Flutes crack easily. beads can be lost, figurines may shatter. That any survive is due to caves preserving them in sediment. Without these geological archives, we might never know of this early symbolic explosion. The reach of innovation depends not only on human effort, but also on chance preservation. The silence of lost objects reminds us that what we see is only a fraction of what once existed. Still, the surviving pieces are enough to prove the point. Innovation was real, widespread, and deeply human. Planetary rhythms continue as humans innovate. Glaciers grind mountains, rivers shift course, coastlines stretch outward. Herds migrate across newly exposed plains, and hunters follow. Yet even as landscapes change, cultural practices endure. Innovation is not erased by climate. It adapts, traveling with groups, shaping their identities, and leaving traces in caves. In this way, Ice Age innovation reaches across both geography and time, carried forward in fragile artifacts that still speak. In the frozen valleys of Europe, survival required skill, resilience, and cooperation. But the evidence shows more. Beyond tools and fire, people carved symbols, played music, and adorned themselves with beads. Their innovations reached beyond necessity, into imagination. In this reach lies the essence of humanity, the drive to create, to share, to find meaning in more than survival. The reach of Ice Age innovation continues to echo today, across tens of thousands of years, in every note of music and every symbol we make. The fragments of Ice Age flutes tell more than the story of invention. They also whisper of continuity. Some of the instruments found in Swabian Jura caves show signs of long use, finger holes worn smooth, edges reshaped, cracks carefully repaired. These details suggest that flutes were not disposable experiments. They were treasured objects, valued across seasons and perhaps even generations. In their persistence, we glimpse echoes carried forward in time, linking one group to the next. Archaeologists studying broken pieces notice patterns of repair. On certain mammoth ivory flutes, seams appear where the two halves were rejoined. Pitch or resin may have been applied, holding fragile pieces together. On bird bone flutes, splintered ends were trimmed smooth so that sound could still be made. Such repairs required effort and patience. They reveal that music mattered enough to mend, not discard. In a world where every tool had to be functional, the decision to restore flutes shows cultural value reaching beyond practicality. A lesser-known detail is the way some instruments were buried deep in sediment, preserved in places suggesting intentional placement. Were they hidden for safekeeping or left behind as offerings? One flute fragment from Geisenklösterle lies near a hearth, as if stored close to the warmth of daily life. Another from Hohlfels was found in layers associated with ivory figurines, hinting at symbolic connection. These placements raise the possibility that flutes were more than instruments. They may have been heirlooms, objects carrying meaning long after first use. The continuity of music implies teaching. A flute cannot be played effectively without instruction. Finger placement must be learned, breath controlled, holes covered with care. To sustain flute playing across generations, knowledge had to be passed on. Perhaps elders taught children to produce their first tones, guiding fingers over fragile holes. Over time, skill grew and melodies expanded. In this way, echoes traveled not only through sound but through memory, linking individuals across lifetimes. On a planetary scale, this continuity is striking. The world at 40,000 years ago was unstable. Glaciers advanced, Climates shifted, and herds moved along uncertain routes. Human groups were small, vulnerable, and often mobile. Yet within these fragile conditions, music endured. The persistence of flutes shows that innovation was not a brief spark. It became part of cultural identity, surviving upheavals of climate and migration. Against the scale of planetary change, the choice to repair, play, and pass on flutes reflects determination to hold on to meaning. Archaeologists often compare cultural layers across sites. At multiple caves in the Swabian Jura, flutes appear in different strata, spanning centuries. This repetition suggests that flute making was not confined to a single moment or group. It was repeated practice, maintained as groups returned to the same caves. Each generation left fragments behind, layering echoes into the soil. The caves themselves became archives of sound, holding traces of music long after notes had faded. Still, questions remain. Did melodies remain the same across centuries, or did each generation invent anew? Did people consciously imitate ancestral songs, or did tradition evolve with every performance? Archaeology cannot resolve these mysteries. Sound leaves no fossil. What endures are the instruments, silent now, yet marked by use. The silence itself deepens the mystery. We know that music continued, but not what it sounded like. The echoes reach us only through absence, reminding us of how much is lost. A subtle observation comes from comparison with ornaments. Beads, too, show evidence of continuity. Strings of perforated shells appear in multiple layers, sometimes in similar styles. Just as beads reinforced visual identity, flutes reinforced auditory identity. Together, they created traditions recognizable to group members across time. A necklace passed on, a flute repaired and played again. Both objects carried memory, weaving individuals into a chain of belonging. In this way, innovation became inheritance. The presence of repaired flutes also suggests emotional value. Tools like scrapers or blades were replaced when broken. Few show signs of careful restoration. Flutes, by contrast, were mended and preserved. This difference indicates a special category of objects, those carrying symbolic or emotional weight. To hold on to music, people invested time even when replacement might have been easier. The act of repair itself is symbolic, a refusal to let music fall silent. One unresolved scientific debate concerns whether flutes were buried intentionally with individuals. No clear graves from this early period in Europe preserve instruments, but later burials show objects placed alongside the dead. Could the tradition have begun earlier? It is possible that flutes accompanied people at death, though evidence is lacking. If so, echoes would not only cross generations of the living, but also bridge the living and the dead. Without firm data, we can only acknowledge the possibility. Planetary rhythms continue in the background. Ice sheets expand, sea levels fall, and winds scatter dust. Yet human sound persists, carried through fragile instruments. The contrast is stark. Glaciers grind continents, while people carve small bones and mend cracks. Yet in cultural terms, these fragile acts outweigh the ice. They leave traces that endure across tens of millennia, preserved in caves while glaciers vanish. Music, fragile as it is, outlasts ice. The continuity of music also speaks to resilience. To survive the Ice Age required adaptability. To preserve music required intention. The echoes across generations proved that humans did more than react to climate. They created traditions worth sustaining. Music became part of how people endured, offering comfort, identity, and memory. Even when populations were small and vulnerable, they held on to sound as part of life. Step by step, the evidence layers into a story. A flute carved from bone is played, cracked, repaired, and played again. Children learn from elders, carrying knowledge forward. Generations pass, but echoes remain. Caves accumulate fragments. Each piece a trace of sound now lost. Archaeologists uncover them, piecing together stories of continuity. Though silent today, the instruments speak through their persistence. They show that music was not fleeting, but enduring. In the end, the story of echoes across generations is not only about sound, it is about memory, teaching, and resilience. The repaired flutes, the smoothed holes, the layers of sediment all point to continuity that survived against cold, scarcity, and change. Across thousands of years, people breathed into fragile instruments, sending notes into darkness. Those echoes faded, but their traces remain, reminding us that music is among the oldest threads binding humanity together. The discovery of flutes in the caves of the Swabian Jura confirms that early modern humans, or Homo sapiens, made music around 40,000 years ago. Yet the question of origins remains unsettled. Were they the first to carve sound into bone, or did others, perhaps Neanderthals, also explore this path? The debate has continued for decades, shaped by fragile evidence and careful analysis. It is a debate not only about instruments, but about the deeper roots of symbolic life. One of the most controversial finds comes from Divya Babe Cave in present-day Slovenia. There, archaeologists unearthed a fragment of a cave bear femur pierced with 2 holes. At first glance, the holes resemble finger placements on a flute. Some researchers argued that this object represented a Neanderthal-made instrument, perhaps 50,000 years old. If true, it would push the origin of music far earlier and assign it to another species. The possibility of Neanderthal flutes challenges long-standing assumptions that symbolic culture was unique to Homo sapiens. Others, however, dispute this interpretation. Detailed microscopic studies suggest that the holes may have been made by the teeth of carnivores gnawing on bone, not by deliberate human carving. The edges are irregular, lacking the smoothed finish seen on confirmed Homo sapiens flutes. Moreover, no tools or other signs of intentional modification accompany the fragment. Critics argue that the Divje Babe bone is not evidence of music, but of natural damage mistaken for craft. The debate remains unresolved, I swear, with strong voices on both sides. This controversy highlights a larger question: how much symbolic capacity did Neanderthals possess? Archaeological evidence shows that they used pigments, collected shells, and sometimes buried their dead. At a few sites, feathers and talons of birds appear in contexts suggesting ornament. These behaviors imply symbolic thought. Could music have been part of their lives as well? Genetic studies show that Neanderthals and Homo sapiens interbred, meaning that symbolic capacities may not have been entirely separate. Yet without clear instruments, the question lingers. A lesser-known detail comes from studies of acoustics in Neanderthal caves. Some sites, such as caves in Spain and France, contain engravings or pigment traces placed in areas with unusual echo properties. Scholars wonder whether Neanderthals noticed and used acoustics deliberately. If so, sound may already have carried symbolic weight even without flutes. This possibility broadens the debate. The origin of music may lie not in instruments alone, but in awareness of sound within space. Perhaps both species shared this awareness, though Homo sapiens carried it further into instrument making. On a planetary scale, the debate takes on even greater context. Around 50 to 40,000 years ago, multiple human species coexisted: Neanderthals in Europe, Denisovans in Asia, and Homo sapiens spreading widely. Each adapted to the same Ice Age climates. Each used fire, hunted game, and shaped stone tools. Against this shared background, questions of symbolic expression define difference. The appearance of flutes among Homo sapiens is one marker of expansion beyond necessity. But whether Neanderthals matched or paralleled this innovation remains uncertain. Planetary forces shaped them all. Yet cultural responses diverged. Archaeologists emphasize the fragility of the evidence. Flutes made of bird bone or ivory are delicate. Most would have broken or decayed long ago. What survives is only a fraction of what once existed. It is possible that Neanderthals made flutes, but none survived to be found. Preservation bias always shapes the record. Thus, absence of evidence does not prove absence of music. The debate of origins persists partly because the archaeological archive is incomplete by nature. One unresolved scientific mystery concerns the role of interbreeding. Genetic evidence shows that all non-African humans today carry small percentages of Neanderthal DNA. Could symbolic practices have been shared in contact zones? Perhaps Homo sapiens learned from Neanderthal, or vice versa. Perhaps traditions of sound-making crossed boundaries even as populations remained distinct. Archaeology cannot confirm this, but the possibility lingers. Origins may not belong exclusively to one lineage, but to interaction between them. A subtle clue lies in the design of confirmed flutes. The spacing of holes suggests intentional pitch control. Experimental replicas show that these instruments could produce structured scales. Such precision implies deliberate planning, not random placement. The sophistication makes some scholars cautious about attributing earlier, ambiguous finds to Neanderthals. If true flutes require such skill, then misinterpretation of carnivore damage seems more likely. Still, until definitive evidence emerges, the debate remains open, shaping our view of human uniqueness. The debate of origins also touches on definitions. What counts as music? If a bone fragment produces sound when blown, but was not deliberately carved, is it music? If Neanderthals clapped, drummed on hollow logs, or sang without instruments, was that symbolic music? The boundary is difficult to draw. Homo sapiens flutes offer concrete evidence, but music itself may have existed in many forms before. The origins of music may lie in voices, rhythms, and echoes, far older than any carved flute. Step by step, the argument unfolds. Some scholars defend the Divya bone as proof of Neanderthal music. Others reject it as carnivore damage. New methods of analysis add data, but not certainty. The broader question of Neanderthal symbolism remains unresolved. Were they creators of art and music equal to Homo sapiens, or did they express meaning in other, less material ways? The answer shapes how we understand not only music, but the boundaries of humanity itself. On the scale of Ice Age Europe, the debate of origins underscores fragility. A single fragment of bone can shift narratives of culture and capacity. If Neanderthals made music, then symbolic life is older and broader than once thought. If not, then Homo sapiens represent a singular flowering of imagination. Either way, the caves of the Swabian Jura stand as testimony to a moment when music is firmly present, regardless of earlier uncertainty. The debate of origins does not diminish their significance. It enriches it, placing them within a larger dialogue of species and time. In the end, the debate remains unresolved. The Divji Babe bone may or may not be a flute. Neanderthals may or may not have shaped sound intentionally. What we know is that Homo sapiens in Ice Age Europe made flutes deliberately, with precision and care. Their music is the earliest confirmed, echoing across millennia. The debate of origins reminds us of what is lost, of how much may have existed unrecorded. Music, fragile as bone, endures only in fragments, leaving questions as enduring as the echoes they once produced. 40,000 years ago, the Earth is shaped by ice and wind. Across the northern hemisphere, glaciers stretch like walls of frozen stone, covering vast lands beneath sheets hundreds of meters thick. Their weight depresses the crust, their edges carve into meltwater rivers, and their presence transforms climate across continents. The Swabian Jura, lying south of the greatest ice, feels these changes daily. Cold winds sweep down from the north, carrying dust across open plains. Beneath these winds, humans carve figurines, string beads, and play music on hollow bones. Their voices rise into a world altered by ice. The Ice Age is not uniform. Seasons shift sharply, with short summers and long winters. During warmer months, valleys green with grasses and herbs, feeding herds of reindeer, horses, and mammoths. During winters, snow locks the land in silence, forcing humans to huddle in caves. Archaeological layers reveal alternating patterns of occupation, with people returning to caves seasonally, timing their presence with migrations of animals. The environment dictates rhythm, yet within that rhythm, symbolic life persists. The winds may carry dust, but within caves, flutes carry music. A lesser-known detail emerges from studies of loess, the fine dust deposited by Ice Age winds. Thick deposits across Central Europe testify to storms carrying particles from glacial outwash plains. These sediments, now fertile soils, were once challenges for ancient people. Dust darkened skies and coated vegetation. Yet despite such difficulties, humans endured. Their ability to thrive amid constant change reflects resilience. The very dust carried by winds later buried caves and preserved artifacts, turning hardship into future memory. Planetary changes reshape coastlines. With so much water locked in glaciers, sea levels fall by more than 100 meters. Continental shelves become exposed as plains where rivers snake through grasslands. Humans and animals roam across lands now submerged. The world available to them is larger, though harsher. Winds sweep across these exposed plains unchecked, carrying chill into every valley. Against this scale of planetary change, the carving of a flute may seem small. Yet the survival of music shows how cultural life continues even as landscapes shift. The winds themselves may have influenced human awareness of sound. Constant whistling across cliffs, howling through valleys, or echoing in cave entrances would sharpen attention to tone. When humans blew through hollow bones, perhaps they recognized echoes of the world around them. Music may have imitated or answered wind, transforming natural sound into cultural expression. Though we cannot know intent, the connection is suggestive. In a world dominated by wind, flutes provided human voices that joined, not resisted, the atmosphere. Archaeologists studying Ice Age sites find evidence of adaptation. Hearths in caves are carefully placed, sometimes near entrances to control smoke carried by drafts. Stone tools are shaped to fit local raw materials, adjusted for tasks of hunting in open, windy steppes. Clothing from hides, shields against icy gusts. Yet alongside these practical measures, people play music. The contrast is striking. Winds that bite the skin are met with breath, transformed into tone. Practical and symbolic responses coexist, showing that culture adapts to climate as much as bodies do. One unresolved scientific mystery concerns population movement during abrupt climate shifts. Ice cores from Greenland show sudden changes in temperature, occurring within decades. Did these shifts drive humans into new valleys? Did music and rituals serve as anchors of continuity during upheaval? Archaeological sequences hint at movement, but details remain uncertain. What is clear is that despite instability, symbolic traditions endured.
Flutes, beads, and figurines appear again and again, evidence that culture carried across changing landscapes.
The planetary dimension extends further. As glaciers grow, ecosystems reorganize. Mammoth Steppe, a vast biome of grasses, stretches from Western Europe to eastern Siberia. Winds carry pollen and seeds across continents, shaping plant distributions. Herds follow these resources, and humans follow the herds. Movement is constant, but symbols remain. Portable objects, beads, flutes, figurines travel easily, binding groups even as they roam.
Innovation in art and music thus becomes a strategy of mobility. Culture adapts to the scale of winds and ice.
A subtle observation comes from cave acoustics. Strong winds outside contrast with still air inside. In the calm of chambers, flute tones linger longer, uninterrupted by gusts. The difference may have heightened the sense of music as otherworldly, distinct from the harshness beyond cave walls. Inside, breath became song. Outside, it became survival. The boundary between cave and plain was not only physical but symbolic, separating spaces of refuge and creativity from spaces of endurance. Archaeologists note that the distribution of symbolic artifacts often clusters in regions shielded from the worst glacial advance. The Swabian Jura lies south of the main ice sheet, protected yet influenced by its winds. This position may explain why symbolic traditions flourished there. Too close to ice, survival left little room for creativity. Farther south, preservation conditions were poorer. Here, in the transitional zone, both survival and preservation aligned. The winds shaped not only climate, but the geography of memory. The persistence of flutes across centuries shows that music outlasted individual lives. Children who heard notes in one generation may have learned to play in the next. Repairs on broken instruments suggest continuity, a refusal to let music die. The winds carried dust and change, but humans carried tradition. Their echoes across generations prove that symbolic life was not fleeting, but sustained, even as the world shifted around them. One unresolved debate asks whether music served specific functions in coping with climate. Did flute tones accompany rituals aimed at ensuring successful hunts in windy steppes? Did they mark seasonal gatherings timed with reindeer migrations? Or were they played for leisure, relief from the stress of survival? Archaeology cannot distinguish, but the questions reveal how deeply climate and culture may intertwine. The winds may have been both threat and inspiration, shaping rituals that joined survival with imagination. Planetary cycles continue to unfold. Glaciers advance and retreat, driven by shifts in Earth's orbit and solar input. Winds wax and wane, dust settles, rivers shift. Humans live within these cycles, small in number but vast in resilience. Their cultural innovations, flutes, beads, figurines, persist through upheaval, showing that meaning is as enduring as adaptation. Winds sweep across continents, but echoes in caves remain. Step by step, the picture comes into focus. Ice Age. Europe is not only a world of survival, but a world of sound carried by breath. Winds over a changed planet shape landscapes, yet within caves, humans shape echoes. The contrast defines the age. Glaciers grind mountains, winds scatter dust, but fragile flutes sing. Against planetary change, cultural persistence endures. In the music of hollow bones, humanity claims a voice in the midst of wind. The flutes of the Swabian Jura stand as some of the earliest known instruments in human history. Carved from vulture bones and mammoth ivory, their fragile tubes still hold the alignment of carefully pierced holes. Yet, as archaeologists examine these artifacts, one question remains unsolved. For what purpose were they made? The enduring mystery of purpose lies not in how the flutes were crafted, this we can reconstruct, but in why humans invested time and effort in shaping sound so early in their European story. Archaeological evidence confirms that flutes were functional. Replicas produce clear tones and playable scales. Finger holes are positioned with precision, suggesting awareness of pitch relationships. But function does not reveal meaning. Did these notes accompany rituals deep inside caves, where firelight flickered against ivory figurines? Did they mark hunting ceremonies, calling animal spirits into gatherings? Or were they played in everyday life, bringing rhythm to long nights by the fire? The purpose of music in Ice Age Europe remains hidden, preserved only as possibility. A lesser-known detail complicates the question. Some flutes were found in the same layers as ornaments and figurines, objects often considered symbolic or ritual. This association hints that flutes too may have carried symbolic weight. Yet the absence of clear context prevents certainty. Unlike later burials or painted caves, these sites do not reveal unambiguous scenes of use. The flutes survive as fragments, stripped of their performance. The purpose remains ambiguous, balanced between ritual and daily life, between sacred and ordinary. One unresolved scientific debate asks whether music functioned as a tool of communication. Some researchers suggest that melodies helped coordinate movement, unify groups, or transmit memory. Others argue that music served primarily emotional or ritual roles, bonding individuals through shared rhythm. The truth may be both. In small Ice Age groups, music could reduce conflict, teach patterns, and calm children. At the same time, it could elevate moments of ritual, transforming gatherings into experiences of awe. Purpose is not singular. It may have shifted with need and circumstance. On a planetary scale, the persistence of flutes during the harshest Ice Age conditions underscores their importance. Glaciers advanced, winds carried dust, winters stretched long. Human groups were small, vulnerable, and mobile. Yet they carried fragile instruments, repaired broken ones, and passed on knowledge of making and playing. Against the scale of climate, the effort reveals priority. If music were trivial, it would have vanished. Instead, it endured, woven into survival. The mystery of purpose is sharpened by this persistence. Something about music mattered enough to withstand the weight of ice. The acoustics of caves deepen the question. Experiments with replicas show that flute tones resonate powerfully in limestone chambers. Certain frequencies amplify, filling space with vibration. Was this quality discovered by accident or deliberately sought? Did people choose caves not only for shelter but for their sonic properties? The placement of artifacts deep within chambers suggests intentional use of echo and darkness. Purpose here may have been to connect human sound with the larger environment, blending breath with stone and space. Yet this remains speculation. One more possibility in the enduring mystery. A subtle observation comes from the design of flutes themselves. Some were crafted from bird bones, naturally hollow and light. Others from mammoth ivory, split and rejoined through complex labor. The existence of both types shows variation in choice. Why invest in ivory flutes when bird bones were simpler? Was ivory reserved for special instruments used in rituals, while bird bone flutes served daily play? Or did different makers experiment with materials for aesthetic reasons? The dual tradition suggests multiple purposes, complicating attempts at a single answer. Archaeologists also consider the role of teaching. To play flutes well requires practice and instruction. This implies that music was embedded in learning, passed from elders to children. Purpose here may lie in social continuity. Music becomes a way to transmit not only sound but values, skills, and belonging. When a child learns to play, they inherit a tradition older than themselves. In this sense, flutes are not just instruments but vessels of memory, ensuring cultural persistence across generations. One unresolved question asks whether flutes were tied to spirituality. Did people view sound as a link to unseen forces or as a bridge to animals carved in ivory? We cannot know. Yet ethnographic parallels from later societies show that music often plays such roles. From hunting chants to healing songs, from ritual dances to lullabies, music binds the human and the spiritual. The Ice Age flutes may have served similarly, or not. Their purpose is hidden in silence, known only to those who once breathed through them. Planetary forces continue in rhythm. Ice sheets expand and retreat. Climates shift. Animals migrate. Humans move with them, adapting again and again. Yet through all, music endures. Its purpose, whatever it may have been, proved resilient enough to survive change. The enduring mystery lies not in its existence but in its meaning. Why, amid scarcity, did people carve sound? Why, amid danger, did they play? Why, amid survival, did they insist on beauty? The questions remain, echoing as persistently as the music once did. Step by step, archaeologists recover fragments. They analyze wear, replicate design, test acoustics. Each experiment adds knowledge but not certainty. The purpose of Ice Age music cannot be reduced to data alone. It lies in experiences we cannot recover, emotions, beliefs, and sensations long vanished. Yet the mystery itself is telling. It shows that humans sought meaning that escapes explanation. Purpose may be unknowable, but its endurance proves that it mattered deeply. In the end, the enduring mystery of purpose is part of the story. The flutes, fragile and broken, continue to ask questions of us. They remind us that human life has always reached beyond necessity, always invested in the unseen. Whether ritual or daily play, whether sacred or social, their purpose endures in silence. What we cannot answer fully is precisely what connects us across 40 millennia. The flutes stand as echoes not of knowledge, but of wonder. The last notes of Ice Age flutes faded tens of thousands of years ago. The caves where they once sounded lie in silence now, their chambers filled only with the drip of water and the rustle of bats. Yet the instruments endure in fragments, their broken tubes preserved beneath layers of sediment. They remind us that music, fragile, invisible, unrecorded, was once present here. The stillness of forgotten notes is not absence alone. It is a record of how deeply human expression once reached into darkness, leaving echoes long after sound disappeared. The flutes from the Swabian Jura are the oldest confirmed musical instruments in the world. Radiocarbon dates place them at around 40,000 years old, contemporary with ivory figurines and beads. Their craftsmanship shows planning and skill, holes aligned carefully, surfaces smoothed, ends shaped for airflow. These details confirm intent. But what they cannot reveal are the melodies once played. Those notes are gone, vanished into air that long since escaped the caves. What remains is the stillness of objects, silent yet speaking. A lesser-known detail concerns preservation. Many flutes were discovered in fragments, splintered and scattered. Archaeologists pieced them together painstakingly, aligning broken edges until tubes re-emerged. This reconstruction process mirrors the larger act of archaeology itself, recovering meaning from silence. The fragments remind us that even when notes are forgotten, traces endure. The stillness of caves is deceptive. Beneath it lies memory, waiting to be uncovered. On a planetary scale, the silence is amplified. The Ice Age world that shaped these flutes has vanished, glaciers retreated, sea levels rose, coastlines shifted. Valleys once filled with mammoths are now farmland and towns. Yet the flutes remain older than these transformations, older than cities, older than writing. Their silence stretches across planetary time. The forgotten notes once echoed in a world utterly different from our own. The stillness we encounter today holds within it the weight of climatic cycles and vanished landscapes. The mystery of purpose lingers here as well. Were the last notes played in ritual, in celebration, in mourning? Did they accompany storytelling or teaching? Did they fill long nights in winter with melody, or mark transitions of life? We cannot know. The absence of sound is absolute, but within silence lies possibility. Every broken flute suggests not just one use, but many, layered across generations. The stillness of forgotten notes is rich with meanings we cannot retrieve. One unresolved scientific question concerns how widespread such traditions were. The Swabian Jura provides the earliest clear evidence, but were flutes also played elsewhere? Did groups in Asia, Africa, or the Middle East make similar instruments, lost to time? The absence of finds may reflect poor preservation rather than absence of music. If so, forgotten notes once drifted across many landscapes, now erased by decay. The stillness we observe may hide a global tradition, silenced by chance rather than history. Archaeologists note another subtle clue, evidence of repair on certain instruments. Cracks smoothed, seams rejoined, ends reshaped. These repairs show that flutes mattered enough to preserve. When they finally broke beyond fixing, they were left behind in caves. Their last notes, played before abandonment, mark the threshold of silence. The stillness we perceive now began then, when hands set the instruments down for the last time. Forgotten notes became absence, and absence became memory. Yet silence is not emptiness. In caves, stillness magnifies awareness. Every drip, every crack of stone, every step echoes. The last notes of flutes would have lingered longer in such spaces, fading slowly into darkness. Listeners may have felt that sound remained even after breath ceased. Today, we sense that same persistence. The instruments, though silent, still carry echoes in imagination. Forgotten notes become present again, not through sound, but through thought. Step by step, the archaeological record layers into stillness. Beads and figurines accompany flutes, all silent now. Each object reflects symbolic life, but none reveal its full story. Their silence challenges us, yet also connects us. We too live with symbols, music, and memory. The continuity is clear. What is forgotten in sound is remembered in form. The stillness of forgotten notes is thus not the end of music, but part of its continuity, stretching into our own time. On a planetary scale, the contrast remains striking. Glaciers once roared across continents, winds swept dust across plains, rivers shifted with meltwater. Those forces, vast and loud, are silent now. The flutes, delicate and small, remain. Their forgotten notes are stillness, but their endurance outlasts ice. The silence of caves proves more durable than the noise of glaciers. In this way, the stillness of forgotten notes becomes victory, fragile yet lasting. One more unresolved debate touches on spirituality. Did silence itself hold meaning? After notes faded. Did people hear presence in absence? Ethnographic parallels suggest that many cultures find significance in the pause after sound, the quiet following song. Perhaps Ice Age groups, too, sensed that silence was part of music, a space where meaning lingered. If so, the forgotten notes we confront today are not entirely foreign. They mirror the pauses that humans have always used to reflect, remember, and imagine. The flutes of the Swabian Jura, silent now, remind us that music's essence is both presence and absence. Notes exist only in the moment of breath, then vanish. What remains is memory, tradition, and meaning carried across generations. The stillness of forgotten notes reflects this truth. It is not failure, but the nature of sound itself. Music was always meant to fade, leaving only echoes behind. In the end, the caves hold silence where music once lived. The stillness of forgotten notes cannot be broken, yet it continues to speak, reminding us that humans have always sought more than survival. They sought beauty, connection, and wonder, even when glaciers closed in and winds swept dust across plains. The silence of today is itself a record, proving that 40,000 years ago, people played, listened, and remembered. Forgotten notes may be lost, but their stillness endures, carrying the oldest echoes of human music into our own world. The caves of the Swabian Jura lie quiet now. Visitors walk their chambers, tracing stone walls once lit by fire. Yet beneath their feet remain traces of something older than any nation, older than agriculture, older than writing. Flutes carved from bird bone, beads strung from ivory, figurines shaped with patient hands, all preserved in silence for tens of millennia. These objects speak of a moment when humanity first discovered that life was more than survival. In music, in image, in symbol, people reached beyond need into meaning. The notes once played are gone. The melodies drifted away long before glaciers melted, long before rivers changed their course. Yet the fragments endure, carrying echoes of what was. In every smoothed fingerhole, every repaired crack, we glimpse determination to preserve sound. The stillness of forgotten notes is not emptiness. It is testimony to continuity, proof that humans have always sought beauty. Even in the coldest times, archaeology recovers fragments, but imagination restores presence. When we hold replicas of these flutes and hear their tones, we reconnect with ancestors whose names we will never know. Their breath became music, their music became tradition. And though silence followed, the memory survived in bone and ivory until rediscovered. In the end, the oldest musical instruments remind us that humanity is not defined only by struggle but also by expression. We endure, but we also create. Across 40,000 years, the impulse to shape sound and share it with others continues. The first notes are forgotten, yet their meaning is not. They still resonate, quiet and steady, in the long story of who we are.